my screen?
Yes.
Cool. So thanks everyone for being here today. All of you know me. Those of you that may be listening or watching the recording, my name is Christina Shelton. I am running for Assembly District 90. And one of the things that when our campaign was thinking about how we connect with people in the community through, right, social distancing, we figured let's pull the plug. Let's try a virtual meeting and see if we can start to connect with voters virtually, because that's what this campaign is all about. This campaign is about elevating voices and getting the people who are closest to the issue talking about the issues so that you all are informing decisions that are happening at the state level. So that's really the purpose of this. Shockingly, maybe this doesn't happen with other people and other campaigns. The goal here is not for me to do all the talking, but for us to have a really honest conversation about how COVID-19 is impacting us either personally, but also professionally. I had some really great phone calls last week and over the weekend with some people at the state level. And when I told them that we were hosting this event tonight, they were really excited and they encouraged me to circle back with them to let them know too what comes out of this conversation. So that's also the goal, is how do we elevate what we talk about tonight to ensure that we're still, we're fighting for and advocating at the state level what all workers need around Wisconsin. Okay. So as I said, I'm Christina. Some of you know me from my school board work. I also serve on the Green Bay Area Public School Board. And I do have 2 little kids, so if you hear them screaming in the background, they're actually outside playing right now. They have been banished to the outside for the next hour. And, but it's, again, I'm a person in the community, and we're here because we want to be a part of the conversation with all of you. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to try something new. I've never done this before. We're going to launch a poll because I want to check in with each of you and see how you're doing. So let me see if I can figure out how to do this. All right. So can you guys see the first question?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead and put in for question 1, how are you doing today? I tried to come up with some interesting responses. And it looks like you all have to go through and choose, there's 3 different questions, so go ahead through and answer each one. And let me know, maybe you can give me a little handshake when you're done, or a little head nod.
So number 3 doesn't really apply to us yet.
Okay.
But I had to click 1.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Más o menos.
That's great, Carol.
I'm lucky. I'm fortunate.
Yeah. Yeah.
¿Cómo quieres, mi amor?
I'm excited that the poll is working, you guys, because when I saw this was an option, I was like, we're going to do this. We're all adults. We can manage this. All right. So did everybody get a chance to vote?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's go through real quick. How are we doing today? So 3 of us said so far so good. 1 of us said there's room for improvement. No one said, do I have to answer, which is good, right?
Yeah.
So why did you join today's virtual event? So knowledge building and social connectedness were the top 2. And then the last one, which is, which of the following have you experienced over the last 2 weeks? So cutting back spending and trouble with securing food. Yeah, definitely for us, for our family too.
I can't see.
Okay, we thought you were just staying on the first question. So
oh, you want to go through the other ones?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain that you didn't have answers for everything.
Oh, okay.
Because he thought that it was just the first question. ¿Y por qué quise participar en esta conversación? Compartir sabiduría, recibir más noticias, conectar socialmente, justicia social más o menos, o otra razón. Sí, si quiere.
Mama.
Excuse me. Okay.
Did you guys get a chance to select yet?
Yeah, we're going to the 3rd one now.
Oh, okay, cool. We'll wait for you.
ha experienciado durante las últimas semanas?
Mama,
¿Gastar menos dinero? Sí,
El primero.
sí. Y difícil pagar cuentas. Puede tocar todo lo que aplica. Ajá,
Mama,
sí.
Mama,
Y eso sí también.
Ya.
Y no, sí. Y ya.
Papi, Papi.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Right. So we added in advocacy for number 2, and then with number 3, trouble paying bills, trouble getting medical care for myself or my family, been laid off or lost a job. Yep. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Edwin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. So I need to go back and share my screen. I'm learning.
You're good.
All right. So I wanted to introduce our other speakers as well. So we're going to get into our conversation just here shortly. So our first speaker, and you see her on the screen, is Carol Chow. Carol, how do you say your last name again?
Chow Minnow.
Chow Minnow. I always say Minio, and now I realize that's wrong.
It's
So
French Canadian.
Okay. And Carol is a PE teacher in the district. She has been Sarah, my daughter's PE teacher. She's also has a 4-year-old and a baby due next month. And she and her husband own a few rental homes around Green Bay. So Carol, why don't you just give us like a 1 to 2 minute overview of why you're here today and what sort of sparked your interest in participating in the conversation?
I guess how this COVID-19 is affecting other people in our community. And basically, I know you're running for office and everything, but what needs to be done to help support our community, support our economy, so that people can access medical care, can have food on the table, can pay their bills, because this is a very real thing that is affecting lots of people, everywhere from the employees up into like the bosses and the restaurant owners. My twin sister is an audiologist, a doctor. She owns a business in Chicago, and she had to furlough all her employees. And I mean, the concern is real, and it happened literally in a couple of days. Also, we've reached out to we own 3 rentals around Green Bay, and we've reached out to all our tenants, said, hey, we know this is going on. Please let us know, be in communication with us. We can be flexible. We do have some emergency funds set aside. But last week, they're like, so far, so good. And then we found out 2 have been like laid off. Yeah. So coming April 1st, I mean, we have to still pay the mortgages, but figuring out, what we have to do to ensure that people still have housing, that we can still pay the bills and so forth.
Yeah. And I definitely want to get into some of that with you too, because I think the housing market is such an interesting component of how this economy moves forward or doesn't. And to your point, not evicting tenants is important, but you also have your mortgage that you have to pay. And so how do we navigate all of that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We're going to come back to you in a moment, and I'm going to next introduce Edwin Perez Fraga. Edwin is a contemporary artist who immigrated to Wisconsin from Cuba in 2013, and he lives in Green Bay with his wife and son. So Edwin, thanks for being with us here today.
What is the question?
No, gracias por venir.
No.
Edwin, is there anything you would like to share at this time?
Yes. Well, I have an exhibition in Chicago last month. Where
At Northwestern University.
Northwestern University, and I have to remove the exhibition before the time of ending, and that was because for all these problems that we have now, I have 2 buyers that they cancel for this problem, and now I feel a little disturbed with this. And also this begin to be a chain of things, because I used to help my family in Cuba
Mhm.
with the money that I am earning here in the United States, and this begin to do a change of things.
Well, just that the money from the, excuse me, honey, get off of me. The money from the exhibit is usually what we use to live on in the summer. So it was about $10,000 that he lost. And right now in Cuba, they have an economic crisis in addition to the COVID-19. So they don't have anything in the store to buy. So even something simple like we send money every week to his mother through Western Union, but because of the trade embargo between the United States and Cuba, we cannot send the money electronically. I have to physically go to a check cashing place and send the money, which isn't really safe anymore to do because the check cashing place has not taken any steps to protect its customers. So we had to compile 2 months worth of remittances ahead of time and send it so that we didn't have to keep returning to this place and physically go somewhere that isn't safe.
Wow.
Wow.
Thanks for sharing that, Kristen. Kristen, do you want to show yourself on video so people can see you, or are we choosing?
I'm sorry. We're just all like having a child between us.
It's all good.
Yeah, I didn't plan on being on the camera, so we'll just go ahead like that.
It's all good. It's all good. All right. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. We should talk about that aspect too of having family living in other countries and ways that we support them or can't anymore, or some of the barriers that we face now. And then our next speaker, and Stacy, I'm going to give you a chance too if you want to share after Naomi, because you're on and I think you bring an interesting perspective as well. So I hope you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Cool. The next speaker is Naomi Allen. Naomi manages the Luna Cafe, the new Luna in Bellevue. She's a very good friend of mine, and she has been working in small businesses since she entered the workforce. And then Naomi also runs a natural facial care business too. So Naomi, I'll give you a few minutes if you want to just share what brought you here today.
Sure. So working in customer service and the service industry has been trying, to say the least, with all the things happening with COVID-19 outbreak. And it's been really a lot of new challenges that I never thought I would face. Thankfully, my immediate family is in a space of, we're okay. We can get by financially. We will have other family members that are ready and willing to help us financially. So that's amazing. And I feel very blessed for that. And also I've been taught by my parents how to budget and how to really scrape by, because we grew up with a larger family in a time where there wasn't on one income. And so we learned these things early on in our lives as kids of my family. So thankfully I've been blessed with those gifts. But watching other people around me struggle has been very difficult. And it definitely weighs on, I think, an individual's conscience. And then, if you're at all involved in your community, and then that also has its way to you as well, because you don't want to see anybody struggling. So it's been challenging for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Stacy, do you want to take a few minutes and introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay? We're good there?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm the founder of Sage, and what we are is an arts advocacy organization in Green Bay. As far as me personally, I am a small business owner. I have been for 7.5 years now. And if you wonder what I'm doing over here, I'm a stuffy maker. So I'm literally stuffing a toy right now while I'm talking to you guys. But anyway, so as far as where I'm at right now, personally, all my work is shipped in from my customers, so I'm doing good from a small business perspective there. But what we did with Sage was we committed to a physical location, and now we're looking at we were supposed to open May 1st. And what does that look like? And what happens if we can't host a fundraiser because we are literally on a shoestring budget? And at the same time, for the artists that are in our organization, providing them with a space where they still feel relevant. Because if you're in a situation where you're having to choose between, do I buy the piece of art or do I put food on my plate? We all know the answer to that. And so just really wrapping our heads around, where does art have a home when this is all over? And then at the same time, how can we uniquely contribute to the needs of everyone in our community?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Stacey. And one of the things that really strikes me as each of you were talking is the importance of like a social safety net, right? Like each of you talked about that in a different way, that whether it's a family or whether it's community structure or whether it's like coworkers, that one of the many ways that you're surviving is by relying on each other, right? To get through this, to weather that, or to see opportunities that exist for how we can lend a skill set that we have or a passion that we have to keep our community moving forward. So I think I'm going to start with the first question for the group, and I'll kind of throw it out there for you guys. But how are you, and this is a broader question, not related maybe to professionalism, but like, how are you taking care of yourself right now? How are you managing self-care? Because I have personally found it to be really difficult with the influx of information. Everybody's home. It's very, tight. Being in the house, I was thinking about this yesterday, like, thank gosh it's not November and we're not facing an entire winter of this. Like, at least the weather's going to get better, right? We can open the windows, but how are you practicing self-care and ensuring that, you're paying attention to your well-being?
I can start. I make sure my daughter wakes up at 7:30, so we start with breakfast. And then from there, I try to have a task of a day. So each day I'm like, all right, we'll clean the kitchen cabinets one day. Yeah. The next day we'll do all the fans and have a task of the day. And then afterwards, I make sure to work out every day. So we have the P90X and Insanity series. And then, or I'll go outside for 1.5 mile, 2-mile walk with the dogs. And then lunchtime and then playtime with my daughter.
Yeah.
So keeping somewhat of a routine has been normalizing things, which has been helpful.
Yeah. I've been relying on getting out and walking and running, as a way to, just to get outside and breathe and be out in my own space.
Yeah.
Who else? What are you doing to take care of your well-being?
Well, in my case, I try to, with the same, more or less the same, because we don't have so much to do in this case, no? We try to walk in the afternoon. Sometimes we walk 2 times in the same day, no? Also, we try to prepare some activity in the house with my son. Everybody together doing something like some activity that to play something with my son. Or maybe to cook, because something nice. This help too. It's more or less the same. We can do something else. And now we are trying to prepare to do like a plan to achieve better things.
I'm with Edwin on that. We're doing the same thing at our house. Lots of activities and sharing, cooking together, a new plan, new habits, new goals, just a restart. I think that's a great way to use this time well.
Yeah. Stacey, anything to add?
No, it's the routine. I mean, I'll add that, my task is making sure by the end of the day, my 3 girls didn't kill each other because that is challenging. But other than that, no, schedule, routine, trying to keep everything as normal as possible, I guess. But then at the same time, my twins are 5 and one of them wanted to go to the park. and having that conversation and that honest conversation, even though she's only 5, and yet at the same time being, you know, emotionally conscious of the fact that she's not going to be able to absorb right now that we can't touch the playground equipment, or we can't go play with our friends, and she might cry about this, and that as a parent, I think, is emotionally exhausting in and of itself, is not only being consciously aware of your own self-care, but aware of the care that you have towards the people in your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've been vacillating between exercising and eating copious baked goods.
Carbs.
I run and then I bake cookies, or I run and then I made a pie. So,
balance. It's balance, Chris.
It's all about balance. It's all about balance. So, I'm curious how this is, you know, let's shift here a little bit to your professional work, because, you know, that personal well-being is huge, but it is, and I, you know, Naomi, when you were talking, I could sort of hear it in your voice, how it's like weighing on you professionally. I don't know if you want to start or if somebody else does, but like, how are you sort of processing the heaviness of some of this professionally, of how this is impacting you?
It was really very difficult, especially this last week, with things changing so rapidly. And I was just, my staff, I was just trying to keep them in the loop as much as possible, but letting them also know that these are like minute by minute decisions. So it's just intense for everybody. So everybody's on high alert. Everybody's stressed. We're trying to fulfill people's needs as much as we can without endangering too many people. And so you have to like figure out the line of how long do we continue to fill their wants/needs, and we're kind of enabling them to continue being involved in the community, and we need to isolate, you know? So it was like a really hard decision.
So can you talk about that a little bit more, Naomi? Like, what were some of the specific decisions or actions that you all took throughout the process that were, because I think for me, like in hindsight, like I think back to a week ago, and there were like key days where things changed, or key decisions. So like, can you highlight some of that or talk through some of those?
To be honest, I can't give you like specific exact times when those decisions were made, but I can tell you, I mean, when we, you know, information started to get more and more prevalent, we were taking more and more precautions of, you know, sanitizing our restaurant as much as we possibly could, but we're a very high traffic cafe. So it was extremely difficult and wearing on my staff. I mean, to watch them go through that stuff and just be exhausted after a few hours of trying to keep up with the volume that we see, it was very intense. So some of them voluntarily said, you know what, I actually can't handle this anymore. So we were, you know, ready to say, you know, we're here for you, but we understand also. And so eventually got to the point where, okay, now you're cutting staff, so then you're working more hours, you're more exhausted. It just continued to get more and more, cutting our services down farther. And so then you're wondering what you're even doing. It was very hard.
You kind of start to wonder, I think, like, what's the end game here? Like, how does this play out?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so are you able to talk a little bit about why the decision was made to, because the Luna in Bellevue, they're closed right now, and the one in De Pere is currently open. I mean, are you able to talk about why, that decision-making process at all?
Yeah, I think so. The owners of Luna definitely empowered us as management to help make that choice. Because we're a small family-owned business, we're able to do that and talk about it and discuss everybody's needs and kind of make the decision going from there, which was great, because while that was a stressful choice, we actually all came to the same conclusion. And so, you know, ultimately we all support each other and our safety. Well, also, I don't know if I'm going to say this, but the owner might come back at me, but we'll talk about that. There's families with special needs involved in this. So all of our contact affects people that we're involved with every day, and people that we may not even know has family at risk might be putting themselves in the line of risk that we didn't feel good about that and supporting those choices. So we wanted to make a stand too and say, look, we really want to encourage you to stay home, do the online sales, you know, we can continue with that at least. And then the other shop we do have open, thankfully, just for online pickup orders. So that's been, I think, our saving grace also. So our business, thankfully, will stay afloat. I know there's a lot of restaurants and local businesses that, like Stacy said, maybe, you know, you're kind of wondering, when do I make that choice? How do I make that choice of not reopening or not opening at all? So this is really brutal.
Yeah. I worry too that as businesses close their doors, the intention is to reopen, but the longer this goes on, right? So, I want to get to everyone else, but I do want to ask one more question. This is to the entire group, because I think each of you sort of cross cuts into the small business world in different ways. You know, what would you like to see come out of the state legislature right now? Like, to your point, Naomi, with that decision making, like, did you guys talk about that as a leadership team? Like, we hope that this Wisconsin comes through with, you know, X.
Honestly, I thought about it, and my husband and I are both teachers, and we're both very fortunate that we are still getting paid during this time. And necessarily, I've heard like rumors like everyone might get $1,000 from the federal government. And I'm like, that's stupid, because we're still working and able to.
Yeah.
But I would like to see maybe more in terms of unemployment for like my two tenants that are laid off, that they can get that unemployment. I saw Tony Evers was waiving the week wait requirement for that, and for jobs to search for per week. I'm like, that's fair. Like, I totally agree with that. But I don't necessarily feel like every adult needs $1,000 and every child needs $500. And I'm like, in reality, what's that? Not even a month's of work per se. So I would like to see it moved more to like an unemployment type deal for the people that need it, because so many like corporate and banks and everything have found ways to work from home or remotely.
Yeah.
Any responses to that?
Actually, for us, that would be a huge help, like that suggested payment, because Edwin is self-employed, and his work falls into such a weird gray area. The other thing is, honestly, with all the weird stuff happening at the federal government, trying to use social services as a mechanism to deport people. Edwin's here as a legal resident, but that hasn't really mattered in some of the stuff that's been rolling out. Trying to expand the definition of who's a public charge to deport people. So we would never access unemployment, just because I feel like it's very risky. And I don't really have any confidence that after all of this is finished and things calm down, people aren't going to go back and look through these records and use it for something else. So I mean, the kind of lump payment to everybody will help us get through the summer until my salary kicks in again. But the unemployment actually wouldn't help us. And we're in a weird situation, so I don't know how applicable it is, but for us, that
makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's very applicable. There's so many freelance workers out there now, photographers, artists, programmers. I mean, so many people in media. I mean, it's going to affect all of them, I think, if they are not working under a corporation.
Right.
So is there a way that like they can apply in some way for unemployment as like, I'm a freelance photographer, because they should still have their taxes from the past year to prove like, hey, I did photography, or I did journalism, or I own a small restaurant or a small business, and prove it through taxes.
Stacy, you were shaking your head.
I don't know if I can speak very credibly to this. So as far as how that would work, so I'm a sole proprietor. So I assume that I'm falling underneath the category that you're saying. And the only way that I can say is that I would have to have, okay, so what is unemployment? 40% of your wage?
It's $370 a week. Did you hear me?
Is that no matter what? Or because the only thing that I'm thinking of is as a freelance, I would have to show like average wages, because otherwise for somebody like me, if I had a bad month and didn't get business, do I go file for unemployment? I've never heard of anything like that. I've never heard of a situation where, what we're dealing with as artists is many of our shows were canceled. And I've never seen anyone actually address, well, if you can prove that at that show you would have made $300 and what have you, or you would have made $2,000 this month, yes, you can go file for unemployment. I don't know. I've never heard of a freelance applying for unemployment. Obviously I pay in state taxes and federal taxes and all of that. So there's a paper trail.
Right. But to your point though, exactly, is that the way that people are employed is so complicated, and the way that people sort of patchwork their income, right? It's not as traditional as it used to be. So therefore, then you're going to have perhaps more people that fall through the cracks because they don't fit into this box of what we identify as a worker, right?
Well, and I know as far as artists are concerned, there are list after list right now going around of like emergency artist funding and things of that nature. A lot of those are loans, rather than at it and going, well, do I really want to apply for a loan when I don't even know if I'm going to be able to pay it? When is my work going to kick back in? Again, this relevancy of who is going to want to buy art when we come out of this. And so as far as that's concerned, it's overwhelming. What do we apply for? What is appropriate for us? Some of us, we don't make even minimum wage, but it's enough for us to survive because we're the second person in the household and what have you, but it's still lost wages. Right. Yeah. And so I don't know how that looks. I just know we have a lot of artists and small business owners in our community that are absolutely overwhelmed, and it doesn't necessarily take a brick and mortar location in order to feel that way.
Yeah. And there are some federal proposals right now that are looking at expanding, the coverage of more independent workers. One of the things that concerns me though, is like, how rapidly are we going to see that investment in workers? Right. And do we end up at the federal government level helping out the businesses and then that doesn't necessarily end up helping the workers?
Right?
Because I saw somebody posted something on Facebook today, like, great, we'll save the businesses, but if there aren't any buyers, what's the point, sort of thing, right? Like, people don't have money.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a simple way of putting it out there, but yeah, exactly. A good friend of mine is a hairdresser, and she messaged me today and she said, if I don't get help in 2 weeks, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she's very skilled and she's a professional, but there isn't work for her. And she falls into the category too. You think about like, okay, as the economy shifts during this time, and it's like these suggestions, well, we have to get more creative and we have to meet people in their homes, but there are services that just don't translate well into that remote model of work.
Yeah.
Well,
We have to practice social distancing at this time too.
Right.
So.
Right. So Carol, tell me a little bit about, with your background and your work in the district, how has that been from the educator perspective in the public school system, like navigating all the things you're doing?
Crazy. And today was actually nice to have like virtual meetings and like, hey, this is what's going to be expected. Here's what we would like to see do. I'm at 2 different schools, Aldo Leopold and Red Smith. So I had 2 virtual meetings today, and just trying to like move content online. District gave us recommendations. So I see like my 8th grade health students every other day. So I asked my principal, I'm like, are you okay if I upload 2 lessons per week with the assignments, and then make it flexible, because I heard the broadband and internets are being overloaded. Saying, hey, if you do these 2 lessons on Monday, don't worry about it the rest of the week. If you want to do one Monday, one Thursday, that's fine. Everything will just be due Friday by noon, so then I can grade from noon to 3 or 4. And then, so Miss Lambert has actually been really good with that, and said, yeah, that all sounds really good. So We're still waiting for directions for physical education and like what we want to push out to students. We don't want to overburden parents. We don't want you to feel like they have to do like 6 hours a day. But we're just trying to find a balance that kids can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a vision of how like public education, or like, are you talking about that in your professional like circles of generally like moving forward? Like, how does public education navigate this in the long term? Like, are you worried about that?
A little bit. I mean, we're actually just trying to get through the next couple of weeks, to be honest. So like some teachers were sharing out like, hey, here's how you can record yourself and then upload it into like Google Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And because especially like for the content areas like science or math, like there's much more like you have to do A plus B equals C type deal. Health, I could do more slides, add in like links from like the American Heart Association, for like the CPR, first aid type units. So I have things where I don't necessarily have to record myself. So, I mean, it just varies on what content you're teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we're just trying to get through the next couple of weeks, using formats that the kids are familiar with. So at Aldo, we've used Google Classroom quite a bit. So we're trying to keep that format. Yeah. And then, yeah, go with the flow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what are the conversations like when you guys are talking professionally about, you know, the issue of equity, who has support at home, who has internet access, who has a house or a living space that's big enough, right, for virtual learning? And I'll be honest with you, like, because I'm working from home now, everybody's working from home now. There's only so many rooms.
Right.
And there's only so many computers. And so even with support in the house, like virtual support technology, right, family support, it's really challenging to get good work done when everyone's so tight.
Yes, and that's why we're trying to be flexible with our learning, like uploading some things into Google Classroom where my kids could do it 6 o'clock at night, midnight if they want, like when it's flexible for them. In terms of equity, I'm at 2 schools where I believe all the secondary students have a Chromebook one-on-one. And before spring break, we kind of knew, we encouraged all kids to bring home their devices. And then at Red Smith, like they went through the list of students that stated at the beginning of the year they don't have access to internet. Or like get them to the LMC to check out a Khajiit to make sure they have access.
Nice.
So from there, this morning when we were talking as a FIED department and what we're kind of looking at doing for our students, we said, what if kids don't fill out a log or don't have access to like YouTube videos or this? I'm like, then we have to do a phone call. Yeah. We're just going to have to give them a call and try to fill in the spots that way. But we need to try to get them doing something.
Yeah. I have one question for you. I anticipate I know your answer, but I'll ask it anyways. How do you feel about the DPI waiving the instructional minutes and applying for the waiver for the assessments so that we get a waiver on those?
Honestly, I don't teach like a content area like math or ELA or social studies. Because we're in uncharted territory, this has not happened before. So to expect some sort of like accountability on like the testing end, I think would be horrible. And then for the minutes, I mean, we're just in unprecedented times. So we're gonna have to go with.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So Kristen and Edwin, what would you guys like to see? You guys, when you were talking about, your financial security from your, from the higher ed perspective and from, the independent worker perspective, what, at this point, if you could get in front of an elected official at the state of Wisconsin, what would you tell them? What do you need at this point?
Ok, pero ¿entendiste? Ok, si podrías explicar a un político que necesitas ahora mismo ¿Qué quiere decir a ellos? Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So
A difficult question.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's really that idea of focusing, like you said before, Christina, focusing on workers instead of corporations. Like, obviously, we need to keep, our economy is so complicated, we need to keep all the different sectors open. But at the same time, this idea that we still operate, workers are lazy or dishonest and we need to like keep an eye on them and make sure they don't get too much. Like, that's not our situation. And we can't treat people like they're going to game the system. We need to err on the side of being generous instead of, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
I was talking to a colleague who works in Texas and his university's still open.
Wow.
And it's still open because they told people, you have to come in. They won't even let them work remotely. They said, you have to come in. And the attitude was basically, you're trying to get something for free. It's not that big of a deal. And so I guess for me, if I wanted to tell people, I'm actually really pleased with what Governor Evers has been doing. Also for higher ed and teacher ed, suspending PI 34, I think is a huge help for people who are trying to get their license this semester, who can't finish their field hours.
I don't know what that is. Can you explain what that is?
Sure, it's just the state legislation that lays out what you have to do to get a license for teaching. So there's a requirement for how many hours you have to complete in the schools, what kind of tests you have to take. And people, they're going to do it. They can do it. But just knowing that if the schools close in March and you're student teaching, does that mean you have to come back and pay another semester's tuition next fall? Or can you just graduate and we trust that you've done what you need to do? Everybody, by the time you get to student teaching, has done what they needed to do. So stuff like that, I think, has been really good. I just think that fighting more for the most vulnerable people, that's the kind of thing that's going to lift everybody up. Mm-hmm. We're not like in super dire straits, but I think if we have that attention to the most vulnerable and thinking about that. Also, Dario told me he really wants you to know his birthday's in April. Yeah. And we have to do it virtually. But.
We're gonna do I'll send you a birthday cake and then we'll do a virtual birthday party for you.
Well, my doctor did tell me, I'll chime in, that my OB has given so many doctor's notices for a bunch of pregnant women to stop going to work because other places were still open, but they're like, I'm concerned about contracting this disease while being pregnant. So she said she was writing work notices like no tomorrow. They've canceled a bunch of non-essential appointments. So like over spring break, we had dentist appointments, dermatology, and they were all essentially canceled. But because I'm so far in my pregnancy, that is still on. So.
And your due date is when, Carol?
Well, we were talking induction at the beginning of April, like April 10th-ish, because I have high blood pressure due to pregnancy. But now since lungs mature last, it might be later because if the baby were to get this disease, you want mature lungs. So.
Yeah.
So you got to relax.
Right?
No time like a pandemic to relax.
I know. Everyone's like, oh, April's a great month to have a baby in spring. I'm like, yeah, it is. And now, no.
Yeah. So Stacy, I want to go back to you because I wanted to wrap up with this question tonight, which is how can people support you as an independent worker? And how do you think we can support each other? Do you have any ideas?
So for me as an independent worker, I think, financially, I'm okay right now. Emotionally, I would say social media is a huge asset for us as small business makers. So one of the things that we really push with our organization is that if somebody posts, hey, I made this, that you share it. and that you're seen. And so that maybe you can't afford to make that purchase, but somebody that saw the post that you shared can afford to make that purchase. We really advocate for that. Commenting on a social media post, hey, that's a really great job that you did, whatever that looks like. That's a really great way to contribute to a small business maker. As far as like us as an organization, like I said, I've been really quiet. And I think that comes from our organization really being contemplative in where does the arts fit in. And I think what you're going to see is really going to be more beautiful than anybody could ever expect. And that's where we all band together. And that's where we say, you know what, I have the ability to make the art, but you have the ability to purchase the art. And then the money that I make from that art can go to St. John's Homeless Shelter, can go to supporting these organizations that are busting their backsides for the people that are most vulnerable. And so I think that's where artists are going to find their relevancy. And it's going to, like I said, it's really going to be a beautiful thing. And so as long as we, as creatives, are emotionally supported, that's step one. And giving everybody that sense of purpose, and saying that even though art, you can't eat, well, some art you can eat. My baker friend would say that you can eat her art. But, even though theoretically you can't eat that painting that I just made, that painting is going to put food on my table. And so that's where it's very relevant. And other than that, get ready, because when this is over and we are able to socialize, arts is going to be the first place that you're going to want to go to have that socialization. And I think that's going to be awesome. Like, I just envision so many happy people and that's going to validate me, and so we look to the future. And let people know that you're out there. I would say, as an artist, let it be known who you are, what you're doing, so that your fellow artists can support you, because we know what you're going through. And, like I said, it might not be financially, but we'll get through it.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi, what do you think? I mean, how can people support you? I know you're not at Luna right now, but are you still selling your facial products on Etsy?
Yeah, so I didn't really touch on that, but yes, I actually also am a maker and have had a small business in natural facial care for 10 years or so. And yeah, I will continue to make my products and have them online and everything for your facial care needs.
I will tell you that I use her facial products and they're wonderful. So. Yeah. Any other ways that we can support you, Naomi, or like the ways that you're hearing in the community that we could be supportive?
Excuse me.
Did we lose everybody? Uh-oh.
Is everyone there?
I'm here.
All right. Everybody's probably on Zoom. We're getting slow here.
We lost them.
Okay. Are we back? No. I think, are we good?
I see everyone.
All right.
Should I keep going?
Yeah, go ahead. What else did you want to say?
I think that if small businesses have internet capacity and they're able to support themselves online with any sales, I think definitely seek that out, because that's going to be what keeps small businesses and makers and creators afloat. So definitely seek.
Yeah, you can't go to the store, so get online.
Yeah.
My next door neighbor owns a restaurant, and he said people buying gift cards has been really helpful.
I agree.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that whatever we come up with for small businesses or just individuals, it's really important that we send a clear signal that immigration status doesn't matter in accessing the help. I know California sent that message out, but I think that, like we had mentioned earlier, right? I think there may be some people who really need the help, whether it's their mom and pop taqueria or whatever, but they might out of fear, not access those services. And same with medical help as well.
Right.
I've been seeing a lot of people concerned about ICE agents in hospitals, stuff like that.
Hmm.
I think kind of depoliticizing a lot of this would really open up access, and just sending a clear signal and letting people know for sure it's okay for you to access this if you need it.
So
Kristen,
then,
what did California do? Did they just put out like a statement, or I'm curious how they communicated that?
Yeah, it was similar to what Governor Evers is doing, where he sends out here's what's going to happen. You know, we're not going to shut off your electricity or your water. I know that just came out. Their governor a couple of days ago sent out a similar statement that just said, here's the different kinds of help that's available. Citizenship status doesn't matter. And I think because so many people who are undocumented make their home in California, he was just trying to really clarify what was going on for people.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I will definitely elevate that to the leaders that I know at the state level and see if we can get something moving forward on that. That's really a good point. Stacey,
Yeah.
were you going to say something?
I was just actually going to bounce off, Kristen, when you're talking about that. So for somebody like me who wants to be able to support those people and wants to be an advocate for those small business owners that might not feel that they have access to things like that or support like that, how do we find them? How do we reach out to them? What is the best way for me to be visible to them so that they know that they feel welcome?
To me, I think that's where we take existing organizations and people in positions of authority and make sure the messaging is clear, that the resources are clear, that the steps you can take are clear. That's why we had people, trying to drink bleach at the beginning of this, because we didn't have clear messaging, right? And we didn't have, here's what you do. And so I think when Governor Evers says something, then we know it's valid. We know there's an authority behind it. So I'm thinking about the hit that our dairy industry is going to take, for example. They've been talking about the prices really, really dropping, and how dependent our dairy industry is on undocumented workers, quite frankly. So all the ways in which this is kind of coming together, like if the dairy industry has to lay off those workers, that's a lot of people who may not be able to get any sort of financial support, and quite frankly can't go home at this time either. So
yeah. Okay. Carol, so we'll end with you. How can we support you, and how can we garner community support at large for public education, or maybe from being a parent or even a landlord because you have properties?
Honestly, I just want to know what's going on, like communication. Like I might not want to hear it, but I think it's important to know like what might happen. Like, hey, if they decided something and say, hey, you can't do any like evictions for people not paying, but yet they're still expecting the mortgage to be paid, then all of a sudden my husband and I will have 3 mortgages. So it's one of those things that gives me a little bit of concern, but I'm a planner and I'd like to know what's going to happen, even if I don't want to hear it. And like, I am like totally like self-quarantined because I found out if I get this COVID-19 and I have the baby, I can't be around the baby for 2 weeks.
Wow, really?
Because it does not pass in utero.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, extreme quarantine now.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear it, but at least I know.
Well, and that speaks to the importance right now, right, of healthcare, right? Access to healthcare. This is a great time for us to be thinking about expanding Badger Care, universal healthcare, because not only is it preventative, but I mean, we're talking about people that could be facing huge medical bills if they get sick, when they get sick.
Right. And if they're laid off and their work is tied to their health insurance, how are they going to pay for it?
Yep. I asked that question actually yesterday to someone at the state level, and they said, well, people can apply for COBRA. And I said, who can apply for that? It's out of everyone. Anyone who knows anything about COBRA knows that it's out of your price range, right? For most people.
Yeah.
It's a non-answer for me.
Yeah.
So.
And it's just ironic the way the healthcare is tied to your employment versus, just being able to just access to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you all. This was an awesome, I feel like we should do this weekly. I know we all have a lot of stuff going on, but talking about social connectedness, this was really insightful. It was so great to hear about how this is impacting you personally and professionally. Does anyone have anything else that we want to share before we wrap up?
No, thank you for having me. Like, I wouldn't even thought of like the perspectives of like Edwin or so forth. So that's eye-opening for me. Thank you.
Same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. So I'm going to say this because people who may watch this, the recording, you can follow more about the campaign on Facebook, at our website. You can email us at christinaforassembly@gmail.com. We're going to hopefully have more of these virtual events. We are thinking about doing a parent and child one after the April election. So Carol, if you're around and you're with baby, maybe you want to join us. I'm trying to get one of my girlfriends who dresses up into characters to dress up as Superwoman and
Yeah.
talk about women in politics. So stay posted. We might be doing that. But yeah, thanks again for taking the time to be here tonight. I really appreciate you all, and stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yep, bye.